All right, folks, welcome back to yet another episode of Fresh Juice, an indie game podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Tommy Fresh, and joined, as always, it is
Matty Juice. You can see the name right there, folks, on the YouTubes. No big surprises here. And another ep. Here we are, Tommy. Here we are.
Oh, buddy, I'm excited to talk about what we're going to be talking about this week because this is something. I think it's the first kind of full release, or not full release, it's early access release, but first actual review of a game that we saw at PAX East this past year. Am I right in saying that, or did we review
I
something else?
believe so. I'm looking at our list here. I don't think there was anything else. I mean, we talked about Goons, but that was not this previous year. We were at
Mm-hmm.
PAX, right? So, yeah, I think it is really the first one that we're doing that was from PAX this year. Pretty cool.
And that game is Throne of Bone, a card game auto battler kind of roguelite drafter. We're going to talk about it. It is a lot of what's pretty hot right now and kind of coming to like the mainstream in terms of indie games, and we're going to see if the culmination of it is actually a good thing, because this is a pretty well thought out game. So we're going to kind of jump into it, but before that, what's going on? How's your week been?
Yeah, it's been good, overall. It's been a slow moving week. I know it's only Monday we're recording, but it feels like it's just been like molasses today. But yeah, over the weekend, I mean, I had some friends over. That was good on Saturday. And it was just hot. It was just way too freaking hot for me to want to do anything else. So I played a lot of Elden Ring, to be honest, like these past few days. The new DLC dropped. We'll talk about that a little later. Yeah, that's mainly what I've been up to, just because it's been like 95, 97, and the lawn's all burned. You know how it goes. But yeah, nothing too crazy because of the heat there.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. This is like, people will talk about seasonal depression, like when it's like really cold out, especially up here in the Northeast. I'm the opposite. This is like the I do not like summer really that much. I think I like summer when it's bearable, but like when it is in the 90s, super humid, like you start sweating as soon as you walk out the door. I'm just
Yeah,
not about it. I like actually walking out and it's bitter cold. I don't mind, so
yeah.
I'm already, I started, and Lady Fresh actually hates that I do this, but I started just watching TikToks of like Christmas stuff. I'm not like
Oh,
a Christmas guy, but like I'm like, it's just like the have yourself,
yeah.
and
It's
I'm
like that
just
Wolverine meme of just like him looking at the photo, just like
yeah,
missing that time of year.
yeah. I mean, like, and it's always like a slideshow of Christmas in the 90s or in the early 2000s, and like
Yeah.
just like, oh, bring me back. Like Toys R Us was so sick, I love that.
Oh
So
man.
yeah. But for me, my week kind of sucked. I shortly after we recorded last week, I came down with a sickness. What, and and I was sick all week, which kind of sucked. But I should have
Yeah.
known. I was hanging out with somebody last weekend in Minneapolis that was just sneezing up a storm. I'm like, I'm getting this thing, unfortunately, and I did, but it only lasted a couple days. I'm pretty much 100% now, so you
Yeah.
know, as I say that, I want to cough, but that's neither here nor there. But it was an okay week, just got some stuff done. I'm trying to even think what I really did. I mean, last night we made homemade sushi. That was awesome.
I saw that.
Yeah, we went to this really good kind of fish market near us, and like hey, how much sushi grade tuna do you have? And the guy was like, not that much. I was like, I only need like a pound. He's like, I probably only have a quarter pound. And then it was 0.91 pounds. So basically a pound. So why'd you hardball me, man? So that was pretty cool. And I also went to a it's a Mexican and Peruvian restaurant, but I got the Peruvian food, a lamb stew over this
Mm.
thing called taku taku, which is just like a combination of rice and beans, but So good. So
Yeah.
good. Sat outside in the 90-degree heat. Not as good, but there were fans, which is good. Not fans of the show.
Yeah, well, maybe. Who knows? You
Maybe
know, they're
they
just
didn't
too
know.
shy. Yeah.
They're too shy. They didn't want to come up to me. But other than that, I played a lot of Throne of Bone this week, and I'm getting really close to the 100% on Balatro. I am on the final challenge of Balatro, in the challenges tab, which is jokerless. You can't have jokers.
Oh boy.
It is testing me
Yeah,
quite a bit.
that's crazy.
And
So you got to do a lot of enhancements, I guess.
yeah,
Pretty
enhancements, and
much.
like you gotta just level up. You gotta choose one hand to just level up with the
Yeah.
planets. And straight is one of the best ones to do in this. Like I never really focus on straights anywhere else. Straights in this is the best thing to do. And you're like, oh yeah, I'm off to a hot start. I got like, because the planet for straight is Saturn. I got like 5 Saturns in a row at the shop,
Yeah.
and then they just dry up, and you're just like, and like the scaling catches up, and you're like, now I need 2 straights, and straights are
Yeah.
hard to get already. I need 2 straights to beat this,
Yeah.
and it is it's a lot. So
Jesus.
we're still
So
working on that.
you can't have any jokers, even if it's like a generated, like like a tarot card like generates you a joker, like
So they take
at
those
all.
ones out in the
Okay,
challenge. So the
gotcha.
only way technically you can get a joker in this challenge is if you get the blank tag, the little blank one, and then get the next level of that, which will give you 1 joker slot. And
Mm.
then on top of that, you have to do a skip that gives you a joker, and that's the only way
Uh,
you can get a joker, because they don't show up in the shops, because
yeah,
they just, because it would be a waste of a slot in the shop. So
yeah.
it's
Jeez.
it's fun. I enjoy the challenge, but it's testing me, and I'm losing my mind. But we do have a great show for you all this week, as we always do. I mean, it's always a freaking banger
It
as
is.
far as I'm concerned. Now, we're going to talk about Throne of Bone and our thoughts. It is in early access, coming from Windmill Slam, who, is someone we met at PAX East, Pete White, who I believe came from Magic Arena, Magic the Gathering Arena,
He
and
did.
started
Yeah.
doing this, which is pretty cool. And it kind of definitely shows a little bit in the game itself. Now, let's talk about some news. Not a lot of news, but guess what? Fresh Juice Discord, awesome place to be. Go check it out. It is
Do it.
amazing. And you get to talk about all kinds of cool things, right? Whether it's Balatro, roguelites, recommend games, talk about estranged Twitch streamers that are
Yeah.
in big trouble right now. All that kind of fun stuff. You can go do that there rather than, anywhere else.
Yeah. Do it
But
there in the private Discord that we have. Say whatever you want.
say
Okay.
whatever you
No
want.
repercussions.
No repercussions. We will screen grab it and post it on Twitter right away. No. But there wasn't a lot of news this week, really. But I did have some questions for you, Matt, because
Yeah.
you're pretty tied to some of these bigger releases, and one of the biggest like news kind of things that happened this past week, and you mentioned it, was the Elden Ring DLC, Shadow of the Erd Tree. So,
Yes, sir.
um, I played Elden Ring a decent amount. I liked it, and I thought about getting the DLC, but I just really don't have the time, and I'll let you do it, right?
Yeah, I'll
And
do it. I'll
I'll
talk
live
about it.
vicariously through you. But I have a question, right? Because there's something kind of interesting that happened with this DLC, where I'm seeing a lot of people on the internet complaining about how hard this is compared to the main game.
Yeah.
Is now the question I have for you is, well, is that true? First of all, or is this just like because Elden Ring I felt was a pretty approachable kind of Souls like or whatever for
Yeah.
me, because you can kind of level up and you can kind of go fight weaker enemies and whatever. You can go your own way. Shout out Fleetwood Mac. In this, is this just more of that classic like Dark Souls experience? and that's what these people weren't used to, or is it just truly really, really hard?
Yeah, it's not really like the classic Souls experience. It's still very much Elden Ring with like open world. You can, kind of like if you come across a boss, that you can't beat, you can go the other way unless it's like a main boss that you have to get through to like progress the story. So it's still very much open world. I think really what's happening is that a lot, Elden Ring really brought, even though the Souls games were big enough as they were, Elden Ring really brought it into like the mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that a lot of those players never realize that DLCs from software are hard. They're typically hard. Like I'm just thinking like just back to Dark Souls 3, the DLCs for those games have some of the hardest bosses in the Souls series. There's even a boss in there that has 3 phases in the Darks, which like I don't think any other boss that I can think of in the Souls games has 3 phases that you have to get through. Spoiler, I'm not saying who it is, but spoiler. So yeah, I think that's part of it where yeah, we want it to be hard, right? Like think how long Elden Ring has been out. I just saw someone beat the DLC using their mind. They had like one of those things on their head and they somehow hooked it up to and this is a girl, she's done it with like a bunch of other things. I think she beat it with like a DDR pad and like all that sort of stuff. But she beat it with her mind, or maybe it was just the first boss. I forget what it was, but regardless, that's what happens with these Souls games, right? People beat them in ridiculous ways. So if I'm the developer, I'm going to be like, all right, if that's like if you guys think you can do that, I'm going to give you like some ridiculously hard things to get through in this DLC because I want to see if you're going to be able to do it for this. That's kind of what my thinking would be. So I'm not upset with the difficulty. It is hard. A lot of the bosses will kill you in like 2 hits. A lot of them are very aggressive, like right as soon as you walk in. But on the flip side of that, you've got mimics and spirits that you can summon to help you fight. Other Souls games didn't really, they didn't have that system. You can summon like NPCs or other players to help you fight, just like in the other Souls games. Like there's crutches you can have. I've been using some of them to get through because the game, I realize that it's built to be unfair. So I'm gonna do everything in my power to try to level the playing field, even if it's not really leveling it. So even if they still have the advantage. So I don't have a problem with it being this difficult. I actually prefer it this way, even when I get really, really upset, like Maria was dealing with me like about one of these bosses. It was this giant hippo. I was just very upset with it because it was just ridiculous. But then when you beat it, it just feels that much better. You're like, I overcame this ridiculous thing that they put in the game. So I think the core of it is, to kind of sum it up in a nutshell, is just like a lot of newer people are in the Souls series. They got used to Elden Ring, which is an easier, Elden Ring has some difficult bosses. Melania is like a very difficult one, optional as well. But, it's very, it's more open ended. So it makes it a little bit easier. The other Souls games, you're forced onto like a certain path. So I feel like that made the players think that the DLC was then going to be easy because Elden Ring was a little bit easier from what they heard of the other Souls games. So, yeah, I'm glad it's very difficult. I'm not done with it. I'm only, I don't even think I'm close to done with it. I'm really taking my time with it. But yeah, I have seen that seems to be like the sentiment is that even the players that are enjoying it, they're like, yeah, this is like really difficult. But I'm pretty sure they warned us about that too. I'm pretty sure they were like, yeah, like I think I read an article before it came out that all the bosses in the DLC are harder than all of the bosses in the main game. So that's living up to be true. And I know Turtle in our Discord is probably also playing the DLC. So curious Turtle, shout out to you. Let me know. Do you think it's difficult? Throw it in the Discord. I'd love to have a little convo about it because I am finding it very difficult but enjoyable at the same time. So hopefully that answered the question there.
Well, I think so. I think so.
Yeah.
I think that you come back to something and you're just like, I have to like And I think that's probably part of it too, where you're just like, I got to rewire my brain to remember how Elden Ring works and all this different stuff. And now everything that I'm doing that's new is super hard, yada, yada, yada. Now, I
Mhm.
got to say, the using your mind
Yeah.
to me seems like easier to me. And I will say this only because in my experience with that game, because that was like my first like Souls like kind of game, where so I was like, not good. The
Yeah.
parrying was a nightmare, right? I was trying to cheese everything because I was like,
Yeah.
I can't. It's a skill issue, right? For
Yeah.
me, like I have to find a different way,
Hey,
right?
yeah, that's totally fine. Cheesing's fine. Any way
Cheesing,
you can find a win is a valid way in my mind.
and I'll tell you what, I never got past that one boss on the bridge, and I never will because I probably just won't revisit the game. But to me, if I was using my mind, because like I knew I wanted to parry, right?
Yeah.
I knew I did. My hands weren't doing it, right?
Yeah.
So like if my mind, it's like that should be parry.
Yeah.
I don't know how the mind control
Yeah.
works, but if
I
it was
think,
like that,
yeah, from what I saw, because like, yeah, that would make it a lot easier. But from what I saw, I think because this isn't like a Neuralink that's like in your brain or anything
mm,
like that, it's like this headset you wear. I'm pretty sure this girl said that she has to like, if she wants to parry, for example, she has to imagine like something that triggers like that part of the brain. So it might be like, oh, I'm imagining like sadness. So that like that's what she like connects to being like the parry button, if that makes any sense, right? Or
oh
like
wow,
when she wants to attack, maybe she like thinks about something that makes her angry. Like it's not like, yeah, from what I saw, she wasn't able to like connect it in that way of just like thinking like jump right, left, like she has to like kind of map her, like do like button mapping with her brain waves to like what the buttons are in the controller. Like I don't know, it's wild. It's wild stuff, but
well, there's
yeah.
no way that I'd be able to do it because I have no control over my emotions.
Yeah.
I don't even know if I have them sometimes. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's pretty interesting. Now, I did have another question for you. This one's not as in depth, but I guess it is somewhat indie game related. Once Human, this game that you've talked about, you've taken off work for the launch day.
I
You're
have.
making a lot of content on your YouTube channel for it. Shout out
Yeah.
Matty Gorm TV. Once
Yeah.
Human, I'm scrolling through the App Store on my phone one night, a little bored. I ran a chest in Squad Busters, so I'm like, let's see what else is going on. Once Humans come to mobile,
Yes. Yeah, so
how's that work?
NetEase, yeah, NetEase is the publisher for Once Human, and they have taken a lot of like games like Dead by Daylight they put on mobile. There's a
Mm,
bunch of games on their site too. Um, so yeah, Once Human, their plan is to launch PC and then soon after launch mobile. There's actually some gameplay for it online. They had a little test. That you can look up some gameplay for. And yeah, it'll have full parity between the PC and the mobile version. So like we could play together. Like, you can get everything I can get, like all that sort of stuff. Obviously the concern comes with like, well, how, we kind of understand how they're going to monetize the PC version, which if there's full parity, that's how they're going to do it on the mobile version. But there's obviously those concerns, right, about the predatory practices of mobile games. Squad Busters, good example. Very, very hard to not spend money on a game like that, right? They know what they're
mhm.
doing. So that's the concern with the mobile version. But yeah, it's supposed to be out on iOS and Android. And then they're going to be looking like a console release at some point after that. But it seems like PC and mobile are like the two main things, which I personally, as someone who's played the PC version, I don't know how easy this game is going to be to play on mobile, especially if there's full parity, unless you have a controller hooked up. But they've shown it with touch controls, so I guess it's possible to use those. But yeah, pretty wild stuff. Definitely not a game I would think would be on mobile.
Well, I wonder if this is going to be a trend going forward because I'll be honest with you, the kids, the younger generation, they're quite good at playing these games with touch controls or whatever. It's
Yeah.
almost like default for a lot of them, right? You know,
Yeah.
I mean, they're on their iPads all the time, which, we can debate all day whether that's a good thing or not. But, for the purpose of this, it's a great thing because they're so good at Once Human,
Yeah.
But, yeah, I just saw that. I was interested because I was like, because I'd watched you play this game. And I was like, this is going to be a mobile?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
very
Wild.
interesting.
And you can pre-register, I think, too. So if you're
Mm-hmm.
interested in trying it, like I have it pre-registered on my phone for whenever it ends up coming out. And yeah, I mean, obviously the mobile market's huge, right? So I know there's been games we played on here that we want on mobile. I mean, Balatro is going to be
Mm-hmm.
coming on mobile, and I'm sure it's going to make a killing over there. So
Yeah.
I'm thinking a lot of these games that maybe they're especially a game like Once Human. Not to go into this too much, but it's an MMO kind of looter shooter game. A lot of MMOs come out these days. They don't last that long, right?
Mm-hmm.
Come out with a mobile version, all of a sudden you got another revenue stream to help support the game. Maybe, yeah, like you said, maybe this is kind of what games might try in the future, with the way Gen Z plays on phones, and just how much potential there is in the mobile market. So we'll see what happens. Yeah.
And you always have the icon looking at you because people were addicted to our phones. And then if you're, an idiot or whatever, don't turn off the push notifications.
Yeah.
It'll be like, whatever. Like if there was like a World of Warcraft on mobile, it'd be like, this raid is happening right now.
Yeah.
And you're like,
You're,
I haven't played this in a minute. Maybe I'll pop back in.
Yeah, your
And
chest just refreshed.
you're
Oh, let
just
me
like,
hop in.
so,
Yeah,
uh, pretty interesting. I saw that. I was like, that's pretty. I was gonna just text you. I was like, save it for the pod.
save it.
And speaking
Yeah.
of the pod, we do have a game to review, Throne of Bone, which is it's hard to like really pin down this game. It is a kind of deck builder roguelike, but more just like card game auto battler roguelike, right? You have a lot of those elements thrown in here, but you basically draft minions to defeat all who oppose the honest work of necromancy, learn spells, find relics, and reclaim your castle to unite the land through undeath in this unholy amalgam of roguelike and auto battler. That is a little blurb that was provided to us. It is by developer and publisher Windmill Slam, which is a Magic the Gathering trading card game term. So,
Oh,
kind of, yeah,
I
yeah,
did not know that.
yeah. Well,
Yeah,
when you're drafting, there's a thing in TCGs where you draft, right? You open a
yeah.
pack, you take a card, you put it down, you pass the pack. The person next to you passes their pack, blah blah blah, till all the pack's gone. Sometimes you see a card in your pack that's amazing. That's a windmill slam. You're slamming it down
Ah,
there. So, and there's a certain kind of drafting going on in this. Um, let's talk about the gameplay though. So, kind of open it up. This is early access, by the way, and it's also at $16.99 on Steam right now, and has a demo if you're interested. Keys were provided to us. Thank you, Pete. That was very nice.
yes. Thank you, Pete.
This is a game that I got to play at PAX and I enjoyed. Right, and it was like one playthrough, and I was not very good. I did kind of get through the demo, and then they did a really cool thing at PAX where your deck, if it got through the demo, you got to face the champion of
Yeah.
the demo from that weekend. So if somebody, whoever the first person to beat the demo on the weekend, they became the champion, and then anybody else after that, if they beat the demo, they go up against the champion, and if they beat the champion, they become the champion. It was very cool. Not a lot of that happening in the main game right now, at least from what I could tell. I was just playing single player. I wasn't even looking at any kind of online multiplayer. I don't think there really was. But you play as this necromancer. You're trying to reclaim your throne of bone, which is, the name of the game. And what you do is you pick these cards. They have an attack and defense value or health value. And you have a grid. You place the cards in a grid, and they attack from left to right. Uh, first row, then second row. Now there's different kinds of effects that these cards, these minions have that will allow you to attack further down the line, because you attack what's in front first, but if you have like ranged, like if you have like a bow and arrow kind of character, you can attack in the back row, or if you have something called sneaky, you can kind of do the same thing. When you attack, normally you deal damage equal to your attack, and they deal damage equal to their attack back to you. So you're trying to basically just get to be the last person standing in this little auto battler kind of thing. You set your lineup, you press play, it does it all for you. It's kind of random in a way in which ways or which minions your minions attack. That kind of makes sense within the rules of the game, right? If there's 3 minions in their front row, your minion in your front row is probably going to attack one of those 3 at random. Sometimes it's better that they attack a different one, and then they don't, and then there's like, what the heck? But that's part of the variance in this game, because you got some cool stuff going on. Each minion has 2 different, I guess, like they have 2 different values to them. That kind of is how they're categorized, and that's a race and class. So you got zombies, horrors, blights, skeletons. That's your races, and then the classes are like shaman or rogue or warrior and stuff like that. And you can get like spells that will buff one or the other whenever you combine cards. So after each battle, you go to the shop, basically, where you have some cards that you can buy with the skulls you earn. Basically, each turn you get X amount of more skulls per shop. You can combine them to make a better version of it, and then you can combine 2 of the better versions. So 4 total cards of the same card, you can combine that to make a perfected version that basically is just the best version that you can have. Each time you do that, you get a little bonus, like you can buff up all of your zombies or whatever, or you have a couple choices. But that's pretty much the game. You're kind of going through different stages. I think it's like 4 or 5 stages where you got to beat 4 different waves of enemies. There's usually some kind of boss enemy that's in the top left corner that is usually giving some kind of bonus to their minions, and then in the last round of like going through this stage, they'll become an enemy or a minion as well. And yeah, that's basically what you're doing. In between, you kind of have like weird shop stuff. You can get relics. If you ever played Slay the Spire, it's kind of like that. The kind of like permanent buffs, and then you can collect spells every time you level up. And usually they'll have like a beginning of combat thing, or they'll have like some kind of static ability as well, or they'll be like, you got to summon 4 zombies to create a new spell. That's the gist of the gameplay. In terms of how I enjoyed it, I enjoyed it actually quite a bit. I played a lot of this over the week. It was one of the games I was looking forward to. This is probably more my wheelhouse than yours, Matty. But I haven't played a lot of auto battlers. This is kind of my first foray into that, outside of like some super auto pets, which I've played on mobile, which is like a really good auto battler if anybody's ever played that. This kind of scratches more the card game itch that I have. And I like being able to have like synergies and stuff like that, and figure out like, okay, all the zombies kind of want to do this, so maybe I want a whole deck of zombies and stuff like that. And or maybe I want to go focus on like a class, like I'm going to focus on rogues, because they're all like, they have one power level that can kind of really take advantage of things if you combine them all. Or even if you kind of find the synergies that kind of coexist throughout the different classes and races. And I actually think that's really cool, because I think when you play it for the first time, you should kind of focus on your inherent synergies, like zombies, skeletons, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Focus on that. But then as you kind of mess around with it more, you can kind of see like, well, maybe it's just better if I combine this one horror with this one blight or whatever, because sure, they're not related at all, but whatever that one's doing is buffing this one up, because you can have like ability text on there. It's not just numbers. There's certain things that will happen. Like sometimes one will say, if another minion dies this turn or whatever, or this combat, gain +1 attack permanently. So all of a sudden you can kind of like make a bunch of weak ones, and then this one gets like really big or something like that. So I had a lot of fun with it. Now, the downsides of the gameplay for me was, some of the roguelike kind of things felt a little clunky, right? Because like in between your different stages, it kind of felt a little all over the place, not so fluid. And I would feel, sometimes like I'm just picking things, right? Like it didn't feel like like there was much choice or whatever. There was much variation. I think there should probably end up being some more variation, after the first round. Maybe it doesn't always send you to this one place to like do this one thing in between the first round, the second round, yada yada yada. So like I know that it changes a little bit because you can unlock new characters. You don't have to play the necromancer every time. I unlocked the second character, which I forget what her name was, but she can combine two different cards, like stitch them together, which is kind of cool. But yeah, the downside is I felt a little bit clunky in between for me. But that being said, I did have a lot of fun with exploring the synergies and stuff like that. So what about you?
Yeah, you're definitely right. Like, I just feel like you're gonna have a lot more interesting things to say about this one than me, just because I'm not, I'm not a big kind of deck builder guy, but I do enjoy like trying out those games. So from the gameplay side, I mean, yeah, I had a good time like learning the game. I do think there's a few things like on the onboarding process, and a lot of what I'm going to say is going to be like I kind of said, like coming from someone that doesn't really play these types of games all the time. So like I just kind of felt like there's a lot going on here, right?
Mhm.
There's the the kind of the hero that you play, right? That first one that we play that gives you, when you combine different minions, you can choose a kind of randomly generated like buff, essentially. I believe it's randomly generated at least. And then you also, when you level up in the game, you can choose they kind of have this like interesting kind of 3x3 grid system where like you can choose a row or a column of kind of perks that you can get. And then you also have spells, like a whole kind of spell system and quests that are down on the bottom. And then you have all your characters with the different types of races and classes. And then you have to worry about kind of what your enemy, kind of perk is, just so that you're able to attack right. And then you have all the enemy cards as well, like of just kind of reading all of them and saying, okay, like I want to put this card of mine in the back because this one is going to only attack stuff in the back or whatever it might be. So there was just like a lot I felt like kind of like thrown at me, and I know it's early access, like they're working on kind of streamlining the onboarding process, but I kind of felt like it didn't do the best job of explaining things. Like I ended up really just playing, and that's how I kind of learned like how certain things worked. Like I wasn't 100% sure, you know, about how like combining worked. Like I didn't know if it was like, okay, is it only this? Maybe this is something I missed, but is it only the same races and classes that can be combined? Is it races or classes? So it kind of has like these little text dialogues that just kind of pop up and teach you a few things. And I have some stuff like related to that on the art side as well that I think could be better. And I guess I'll just talk about it now. But it just kind of felt like, my experience with these kind of games is Hearthstone. Like just being honest, like that's just, I know Hearthstone's not an auto battler or roguelike, but just in terms of a card game, that's what I played the most of. And something that Hearthstone does, and I'm sure a lot of other games do, is like everything is kind of towards the center of the screen. Like all the decisions that you have to make, like everything, that's where you're playing cards. When you have to make a decision, like that's pops up in the center of the screen. And I kind of feel like this game and the gameplay, I was like finding myself, oh, I have to click something like down in the bottom left here. And then I also like it just kind of seemed like things were like spaced out oddly, and I kind of felt like that started to like confuse me more about like what am I exactly like doing here. Like it took me a little bit to just kind of you know get on my feet, I guess, with this game. But once I kind of got into it and I started, realizing kind of how the auto battler stuff works, because that's also kind of a new area for me. I never played like super auto pets. I think that, I started to kind of get the hang of it a bit. I'm not very good. I'm pretty terrible. I didn't complete a run. I got like pretty close, but I didn't complete like a run. But I did have a good time. Like I do think that there's enough interesting kind of synergies here and interesting cards as well. Where I was like, oh, that I definitely want that like on my board here. Like we're watching right now in the YouTube video. By the way, shout out to Retromation on YouTube. This is their gameplay. They're playing Throne of Bone here, so shout out to them for recording this. But yeah, so definitely once I got like into it a little bit, it started to feel a little bit better. One thing I will say from the gameplay side, even when I started to kind of get into it a bit, is you'll hover over a card and it will say like this card affects warriors. Let's just say that's probably not what it actually says, but it affects warriors, right? At first I was like, well, I don't know what card's a warrior. So then you have to hover over like all your cards and be like, okay, this one's a warrior, this one's a warrior. I kind of wish that there was like maybe this is on the art side, but if I hovered over like a specific tooltip or a specific keyword, right, for like warrior, it would maybe highlight the warrior cards that I have on my board. So I'd be like, oh, okay, this is going to affect those. So I had to basically kind of figure out like, oh, do I have any mages? Like, I don't even know if I have any mages. This guy kind of looks like a mage. Oh, he's not a mage. He's a spirit or whatever, whatever it is. That was just something that just took me a little bit to kind of learn. But I mean, overall, I did think the gameplay was interesting. There's a lot getting thrown at you here. So I feel like if you're someone like me that's not really super into like card games, it's going to take you a little bit longer to learn these sort of things. And I do think a lot of these things will be ironed out in early access. You can definitely tell like things aren't like fully polished yet. And they have a pretty small team too, So I think they're focused on getting those core gameplay mechanics, which is interesting. And I actually did read a little bit about like Pete White, who we met at PAX, and from what I saw, one of the reasons he like left Magic the Gathering was because he was really interested in card mechanics and he wanted to build his own card mechanics. So you can really tell in this game like that he's experimenting, with a lot of different interesting things. So yeah, overall, like in a nutshell, the gameplay I thought was fine. I think it has a little bit of a ways to go through early access, but the potential is there. There's definitely, I've never played anything like this before with all these different kind of systems going on. So yeah, I did enjoy it at the end of the day with the gameplay. It just kind of took me a little bit to realize what I was even doing.
Yeah, I mean, it is a tall order to kind of hop into something like this, and the onboarding maybe could use some polish, but it is interesting to hear that that Pete was kind of interested in like card mechanics, because I do think the core mechanics of this game are pretty great, actually.
Yeah.
Because uh, like there's a clear understanding of synergies and how he wants these cards to interact with each other and stuff like that, and like kind of introducing, like, if you're watching on the YouTube right now, like like a boss will make your your cards attack each other. It's very flavorful. There's a lot of like top down stuff kind of going on here, which is really cool. Which is, for those who don't know, top down design is like, I want to make a skeleton card. Okay, we're making a skeleton warrior card. All right, what would a skeleton warrior do? Oh, it would do this, and then they design the card, right? You start with what you want to do first. Like, I want some, like, I want all of the blights to look like pumpkins or whatever. And I want them to all kind of like work with each other. How are we going to do that? And they kind of really do that really well. Now, in terms of story though, it's a roguelike, right? You know, it's there is some kind of narrative here, right? You're trying to reclaim your throne, and you know, you got a lot of dialogue. These kind of like enemies that you're going up against, and their decks are they all have kind of a uh motive for whatever is going on. You get to the end, and like they just like, the guy's like, I hate evil, I hate like necromancy, like
Hmm.
this is like what it is. It's not very deep at all, to be honest, but I don't think it really needs to be. It at least sets the stage, and I think it does a decent job at that. um you mentioned, like, it is a little bit hard to read some of this stuff sometimes and where it pops up. I would like a little bit more of a streamlined way of kind of getting this minimal story thrown at you. Because you have, like, and we'll talk about the art, you have really cool character design. And I think that this character design would be go hard as hell with some really cool animated
Oh yeah,
cutscenes,
yeah.
right? You know, I want to see this necromancer sitting on this throne of bone get up and like do something. Like, I don't, like, that seems really sweet to me. But story was totally fine. You know, especially for early access, you know, it's a totally, you understand what you're doing. You're going from the the entrance of the castle. You're trying to get to the castle, yada yada yada. So, what was your take on the story?
Yeah, I you know, really the only thing I was kind of hoping for, and is kind of, you touched on it there, is like it would be great to have like little cinematics, you know, that kind of explain why I'm trying to claim the throne of bone again. Like they might have touched on it a little bit. It could have been, you know, I think it might have been easy to miss. But yeah, definitely, you know, we'll talk about the art, but I feel like the art lends itself to like some really cool cinematics, and it doesn't even need to be anything that's like overly animated, right? It could just be kind of just like short little cutscenes of like you when you defeat, you know, a specific boss. Maybe it just shows kind of that boss getting defeated and you kind of making your way closer to the throne. So yeah, I think that that could be something that would be cool. Also, just one thing also on the gameplay side that I just kind of thought of is it would be really helpful, and I don't think this is in the game. I couldn't find it. Maybe you would know, having like a history of what has kind of happened in that game. So I could
Mm,
hover over and be like, oh, okay, he attacked me here, he attacked me there. I think Hearthstone has something like that, and I'm sure some other games do as well. But for someone like me, that would be really useful to be like, okay, like why did that guy just die, right? Like
mhm.
I remember like the first time I there's a specific enemy type that's super low health. I think it's like a poison weed or something. And anytime it damages one of your own minions, it just kills that minion because it gets poisoned, and regardless of what the health is or anything like that. So I remember the first time that happened, I was like, "Well, what just happened? How that guy had 10 health and he died?" Like you know. So then I ended up figuring out what happened because I hovered over the card, but I was looking for like a little kind of history, so I could kind of see what happened there. And I was like, "Oh, maybe he got buffed or something like that." So that's something on the gameplay side that I think could be useful with this game because there is a lot going on. But yeah, anyway, story. You know, wasn't expecting a lot, but there is the potential there. Like the setting is so cool that I would love to just see a little bit more on the story side, a little bit more personality from the characters as well. Like give me a little voice acting, maybe, you know, of just like that's something like personally, you know, hate to bring up Hearthstone so much, but when you play against like the computers in Hearthstone, like they have the story modes, like you know, they come in, there's a little text bubble and it says like welcome rat, or like it'll just like they'll just that they're so like insulting to you. And I just feel like this game that would be perfect for this. So that's probably something I would imagine they would do closer to like 1.0. You know, it's not really a big priority right now, but um yeah, that would be kind of the small changes I'd make for the story. But I also wouldn't get into this game thinking that there'd be a lot of story elements anyway. So it's I'm not really knocking them for that. It just would be a nice to see, you know?
Yeah, yeah. It
Yeah.
it is a tough balance, right? Because, you know, you want the gameplay to be really good, and you want it to make sense. And I really think a lot of it could be fixed by like where, like, the story parts is like where it shows up on screen rather than just text bubbles in the corner or something like that.
Yeah.
And then like also like when you win or whatever, or like you get to the next stage, I think some more dynamic transitions rather than just it showing up like the next screen. It feels a
Mhm.
little PowerPointy at some points. Um, and you know, it is early access, yet again. So that could be like a total thing. Now the art, we talked about it. I mean, I think the character design here is awesome. In the video that we're watching now, if you're watching on the YouTube, there's a lot of work in progress art on this, and um, even some of these ones I know for a fact are even more updated from the version we've played, and um, I love the character design here. You know what's a zombie. You know what's the fungus. You know it's the pumpkin kind of class and stuff like that. It it is really cool, flavorful. It feels like a super Halloween themed game, and that's pretty neat. Like it. There's a lot of personality coming out of these cards as well as the character that you are. Um, we've mentioned a couple times maybe a little bit better of indicating things is probably in order. But I do like that, I could look at these cards and automatically know what's a zombie based on the symbol at the bottom, right? Like, oh, it's the green hand. Like, that's a zombie. Et cetera, et cetera. I know it's a warrior because it has a helmet indicator at the bottom. So like it's doing a lot right. I think a lot of this could be just fixed pretty easily, but like the core aesthetic of this game, super cool. I mean, when we walked up to the booth, we saw basically the picture of the necromancer on the throne. We're like, what is this? And it drew us in. I think it's really, really cool to see the kind of spookiness of this game. I think some nice spookiness is good sometimes,
Yeah.
and it'd be awesome. I mean, I don't want to assume any kind of um uh, what do you call it, roadmap shenanigans
I know
here,
what
but
you're gonna say.
what
Good.
to release 1.0 on Halloween?
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly
I
what I was
mean, I
thinking.
mean
Yeah. I
that
was
would be
just looking
awesome.
into that. Yeah, they do have a roadmap and they do have like a fall content section, but it doesn't mention on here when they're planning to do 1.0, but it
Hmm.
would be perfect, yeah, from a marketing standpoint.
It would be. It would be.
Yeah.
Or at least a sale that week. That'd be
Yeah.
kind of cool now. Yeah, but like for the most part, like, I mentioned the PowerPointiness of the switching of the screens. I think that's a little bit brutal, but other than that, I really enjoy the way this game looks, and they're clearly continuing to work on the character design too and the card design, which is really neat. You know, but the only real thing that I'm having a tough time with is just kind of like the layout. I think the layout could be worked on a little bit, or at least to make it a little bit more in your face, like what you have to do and what's going on. And maybe even like I don't want like them to change the entire font, but like maybe some more bolder of a font because sometimes it gets a little tough to read as well, at least for me. But
Yeah.
I am old, so that is another thing. So, what'd you think on the art side?
Yeah, I think the art was great. Really just pulls you into that whole atmosphere and the setting. Little details like we were just watching where you're able to like select where a certain spell can be applied, and the kind of like trail that follows your mouse when you're selecting a spell is it's like a ghostly spine. Like these little details that are pretty cool that you don't really need right in the game, but um it's just a nice little touch there. I think they do an interesting job with like the neon. There's kind of this like green neon color, like for the skulls and for your level, and like for like the for highlighting like the proceed and the battle buttons and things like that. I think that works really well overall. And yeah, I do agree a little bit about the font. I think that's also a reason why it took me a little bit to like learn the game. It was because I was like reading a lot and like it wasn't the easiest thing to read. So I think that they could, improve that definitely. And also just like their settings menu, like it's very like early access looking, right? It's not really designed like super well. So maybe they'll end up having some accessibility settings in there. So that's kind of, I don't really care that it doesn't look, like a 1.0 sort of menu or options menu, but it does seem like it's pretty limited in those options. So maybe they'll end up kind of adding more accessibility stuff there. And yeah, I agree. Like, I think, it's kind of what I was mentioning earlier about the gameplay is like, I almost just want things to be like a little bit tighter, right? Like I don't need everything to fill up the screen. I don't need something like in the bottom left. I just kind of need everything kind of together. So I don't really need to like be looking around my screen for certain things, if that makes any sense whatsoever. That's just kind of how I was feeling while I was playing it. So I think on the art side, it could be a little bit tighter, like towards the center of the screen. And then I do love the different settings you have behind the cards as well. That does change with like each battle, from what I noticed at least. And so I thought that was a nice little touch. That's something I love in, wait for it, Hearthstone. They do a great job, and they let you interact with it in Hearthstone. That would be cool here as well. Of just kind of, I know it's an auto battler, so you're not really waiting for your opponent's turn. But would be cool to maybe interact with like a little skull that's in the corner and just like kind of tap it. Maybe it cracks a little bit. Something like that could be cool, but not really necessary. But yeah, I do think the art is like one of the art and gameplay are like the strongest parts of the game. Love the way the character design looks on the cards. I love the pumpkin guy. He's awesome. I play with him a lot. I honestly probably chose him more often because he looked really cool. So that's just yeah, they did a great job with the card design. And yeah, I did notice in this gameplay, which actually this gameplay is only like 2 months old. So there's some cards in here that we know there's game art for now. So that just proves that they're continuously working on updating the game, which is great to see. Um, but yeah, I think just the overall kind of feedback I have for the art is just, yeah, make it a little tighter, pull it a little bit together. I actually wasn't realizing that the enemies I was playing were having speech bubbles for the longest time. So maybe some sort of more centralized, like, oh, maybe the speech bubble kind of pops over the cards, so I'm seeing it. It's only there for a half second. It's not going to bother anybody. Here's that little spine thing I mentioned as well in the YouTube video, which kind of looks pretty cool. So yeah, anyway, the art overall, great job. Excited to see where it goes. I think it will evolve throughout, on the road to 1.0. But so far so good. And yeah, a Halloween,
Yeah.
discount or like release. I don't know if they'll be able to do it, but it would be like perfect for a game like this. I can already picture like the trailers and stuff that they could have for like Throne of Bone.
Oh, it'd be sweet. It'd be really sweet. And
Yeah.
like, I'm interested to see what they do in terms of like multiplayer too, because you could just submit your deck, right? Like your minions, and then just like go up against random. Like they don't even have to be there. Like you could just like put them up there. I think that's what Super
Yeah.
Auto Pets does, really. So, oh,
Yeah.
one thing on the art that I did have a note on that I would like to see. Um, there is a certain rarity of cards, and also like a level of cards or minions. I would like that to be a little bit more obvious. So like when you
Mm.
combine two improved minions to make a perfected minion, you get a rare minion. Like I don't know if it's rare or level something, but it is one of the better minions that you can pick one of three. Um, and if I didn't know that they were powered up based on looking at their stats, I wouldn't know like what I was looking for. So like I think um showing like having there might even be something, but I couldn't tell. Like you can tell what's perfected and what's not, but like, I want to know when I'm looking at the shop if this is rarer or higher leveled
Yeah.
than what um I'm used to, because that's usually like a nice baseline for people like when they're playing card games is like, well, it's a rare, so it must be good.
Yeah.
Sometimes it isn't, but like, there must be some kind of rare use cases there. So um
Yeah. And
next is oh
honestly,
yeah.
sorry, just related to that, as someone who's like a noob, I was basing it off of like, oh, this is worth 4 skulls, so it must be better
Mhm.
than the thing that's worth 2 skulls, even though
Yeah.
that might not be the case. But yeah, the rarities would be a lot. I actually didn't even realize there were different rarities.
I don't
which
know
is
if it's rarities, but like you
yeah,
unlock different levels of cards, so I have to
right.
assume there's rarities. And like, yeah, the price of the card is definitely another way to look at it, right? Like if you're looking at the YouTube right now, there's a 5 cost, um,
Yeah.
which is like obviously gonna be better than the 2 costs, but it is what it is. Now, sound, we did meet the composer as well at PAX. I believe that's who I talked to first. And it was Pietro Frigerio, I think, Italian, or maybe I talked to the artist, one of the two, the lead artist. What you know
Yeah.
what? I could be totally wrong, but the soundtrack's great. I think it's just like with these kind of games, you just need something that puts you right in there, right? And it sounds
Yeah.
like medieval, spooky, in a castle. It doesn't get old. I didn't feel, you have different sounds as well for the different kinds of attacks that you're doing. And, there are certain enemies that are like healing each other that has this really annoying sound, but it's not annoying because of the sound. It's annoying because they keep healing and I'm mad about it. But um, I enjoyed the soundtrack quite a bit. Not looking for a lot, just enough to like not drive me crazy because like, you're just kind of looking at a screen like clicking stuff. You need it to like make sense, and I think it totally did.
Yeah, I agree. I got there's a lot of like medieval kind of like cinematic music. Like I was actually getting like Elden Ring, Dark Souls kind of vibes with the soundtrack, which was perfect because I was also playing Elden Ring. So yeah, I really enjoyed the music and the sound effects. I thought it worked pretty well. Really, the only comment I have here is what I already mentioned. Of like, it would be nice to get a little bit of voice acting with some of the speech bubbles that pop up. Just like here and there. It doesn't need to be anything special, but I think it could just add to the overall flavor of the game. And I also do think I'm looking at the list. The press kit wasn't loading before, but now it loaded. I believe we met Ryan Barry, who is
Oh,
their
okay. Lead
who is
artist.
who is the lead artist. Yeah. So shout out to Ryan. Great art in the game as well. But yeah, sound was great. Nothing I would listen to like on Spotify. It's not one of those games in that kind of S tier category, but I definitely put it in like the B of the A tier, of just like this is exactly what I expect from a game that looks like this and plays like this and has a setting like this. Yeah, I can only imagine with like expansions and the continuous development of this game that the music is going to get more epic as well. So excited to see that, but the sound was great for me.
Yeah, it was. And, in terms of performance, the game performed totally fine. I
Yeah,
even played it on my like Surface, and that was working just fine as well. And I don't know. Yeah, did you
yeah.
run into any issues?
No, no issues for me. Yeah, I just played it on Steam on the PC, and I would love to see, kind of harken back to our conversation earlier, like get it on mobile. I mean, I just think it's like such a big market. I know there's a lot going on with this game, but I could see this game working on mobile. Maybe like a lighter version of it almost. I don't know if you'd be able to fit everything on screen, but who knows? I mean, there's stranger things have happened with card games on mobile, but I think it could run really well on that too. But yeah, performance wise, it was solid.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
And well, it was a good time. Now,
Yeah.
what kind of rating they were gonna give it is the real question. And our ratings are as follows: S tier is your certified fresh juice. A tier, a steal, something that you're like, oh man, this is pretty good. Get on sales after that, and then followed by that is manager special. These are your games that are like super tough to play sometimes, but if you're like really into the genre or something, it could be it. And then D tier spoiled milk, something we wouldn't recommend for anyone. And do you want me to start? Or do you want to?
Yeah, give it a whirl, Tom. I'm interested.
I'm gonna give it a whirl. I'm gonna give it a whirl.
Yeah.
So I think that early access, right? You got to keep that in mind when you're looking at all the stuff that maybe needs work, and hopefully it does get work. I'm gonna give this a low steal, right? I think the gameplay here is really clean, a definite understanding of the mechanics within the game that the developer wanted to put out there into this game. I had a lot of fun with it. I like the synergies. I like the art. The sounds good. There's just some choppy stuff, right? With like the early access. Like I could easily say, if this was the 1.0 release and we recognize that it's not, this would probably be more of a get on sale. But I do think that they've shown pretty clearly that they want to kind of continue development and to make this the best it can be before 1.0. So all that considered, I think that this is a low steal for me. I'm enjoying it. I'll probably play more of it because it's a nice little, like, that's the nice thing about auto battlers too. It's just like you can kind of just play it. I just like, my sister came over the other day. I was mid playing. I was like, all right, just leave this. I don't even have to press pause. Just like, all right, see you later. So yeah. So I'm in a low steal.
Cool. Yeah, I'm actually coming from this from like almost like the opposite angle where I'm giving this an on sale with a potential to bump up to a steal.
Okay.
Because I do think that there's a lot of a lot of good stuff they've already done throughout the roadmap. I'm curious to see what they do for 1.0, but just from my experience with the game, the really like the onboarding was what kind of knocked it down a few points where I was just like, all right, this game, I think in its current state is made for people that understand like TCGs a bit more and have like had experience with that, which is fine. I think like at PAX, that's probably like the people that you're attracting to the booth anyway, right? Obviously, Pete's got the experience there as well. But as someone who's like coming in, from like a fresher kind of perspective that doesn't have a lot of experience with that, I just kind of was hoping for a quicker kind of onboarding to really understand like the synergies in the game, and kind of like the mechanics of the game. So I'm just giving it an on sale. I think it's got potential. I could bump it up. I'm giving it a high on sale. Yeah, I think the price point's good as well. $16.99 for the game. Probably goes on sale for around $10, I would imagine, at some point, right? Maybe that Halloween sale that we're thinking might happen. So yeah, I think the price point is good. You're not I would say if it was like above $20, I'd be like, all right, this is like too much for this game in the current state. But I think they nailed the price there. And yeah, I think people that enjoy TCGs will like it. And people that enjoy auto battlers too. It's kind of like two different areas that I haven't really explored a lot is auto battlers and like TCGs. So even though, I guess this is a TCG because
No.
well,
Just a deck builder roguelike, probably. Because, like,
okay, because you do have a collection, so I'm like, oh, you are collecting cards, kind of in a
yeah, but
way.
you don't keep
But
them, though. So, like, that's like the whole,
yeah,
like, you don't go back into battle with them.
right,
So,
true.
you
Okay,
know.
so see, that's how much of a noob I am with this sort of stuff. But yeah, I'm giving it on sale, strong on sale.
Well, I will say that, like, I think that if they're listening out there, we know what you are. No, I don't know if we that a tutorial run rather than because I as far as I can remember, I think they just throw you into a regular run and then they kind of teach you and you can turn off the
Yeah,
tutorial tips or whatever. You can keep them on or whatever. I think a tutorial run with the option to keep tutorial tips on for the real run would probably be like better, right? Like you just give them a separate thing that doesn't feel like you're just playing the tutorial over again, right? Because
yeah,
that's actually like, when you reboot up a new run, the first level is always the same, right? You just like
yeah,
my 3-1 is attacking into this 2-2, or my 2-3 is attacking into this 2-2, and I'm gonna win it every single time, right?
yeah,
Which I think you should always win the first round, but like have a little bit more variation and like have something else separate for the tutorial. Now, it was a fun one, and I'm excited to see where it goes.
yeah.
These early access games. Now, we do have some listener questions, which you can submit on the Fresh Juice Discord, which is the best place ever existed. Now, K Moore, a longtime listener, longtime friend, longtime viewer, longtime
Yeah.
friend, listener, person. K Moore asks, how early is too early to announce a new game? For example, Metroid Prime 4 was announced in 2017, but finally got a release date for next year.
Yeah, this is a great question because I feel like it's always a hot topic, especially around like, June of every year when they're doing all these game announcements. But I think it's also subjective, right? Like, if you're a big Elder Scrolls fan, they're working on Elder Scrolls 6. I don't know. I feel like you're probably willing to wait a little bit longer for a game like that because you're going to put a lot of hours into it. It's similar for like, I would love to get like another Souls game, but I know it's going to be a lot of value when I do get it. So I'm not really like concerned about when it comes. But I will say, if you are doing game announcements with a specific year, I think that if, let's say, there was a game announcement today and they announced 2026 for the release date, that's too far. I feel like your limit should be the end of the following year, and if it's not that, don't put a release date or don't have a trailer.
Yeah.
Unless it's like a major IP and you just wanna tease that you're working on it, I think that's fine, but I feel like most games don't fall into that bucket. So for me, like we just had the Gears E-Day trailer, I know we talked about a bit ago, but, I they didn't put a date on there. That annoys me because I'm just like, when's it gonna arrive? Like, why did you even show me a trailer if you're not gonna at least tell me the year that it's gonna be out? Like, you got 12 months of wiggle room. Just tell me the year. So that does annoy me. So I think if you're gonna throw a year in there, it should be the end of the following year, as at like the latest. That's kind of how I feel. But really, at the end of the day, too, I don't like it takes as long as it takes too, for me to get a good game. But I know Metroid Prime, that's like that they messed that up. Like
Yeah, yeah.
that's
Well, they
that was a fumble right there. Absolutely. So I feel like that's an outlier as well.
yeah, I mean, that one was they had to restart, right?
Yeah.
They went with like the the team that was working on it like sucked or something like that. I don't know if they sucked, but like it seemed that was the optics, like that team couldn't pull it together, so they had to be like,
Yeah.
you got to start from scratch, which is crazy. Now, I think it's like it's probably a scale, right? Like a you know how big is the IP? Because it's like yeah, Metroid Prime 4 got announced. And guess what? People are still freaking stoked that it's coming.
Yeah.
Right? It's a huge IP, right? If it was uh Just King 7 or whatever, whatever that game is that we
Yeah.
reviewed, and like they're like coming 3 years from now, and nobody's gonna remember,
Yeah.
nobody's gonna care. And then there's also like sometimes this came out today,
Oh yeah.
surprise release. Sometimes that's great, but that's so risky because sometimes it's just buried under the rug and
Yeah.
nobody cares. So there's a nice balance. What was it like 3 months for Elden Ring?
Uh
Erd Tree? 4 months
No,
maybe?
they did announce that they were doing a deal. It might have been like
A
a
year?
year, maybe
Okay.
like 8 months to a year, but still it wasn't that long. Like you
I feel like
knew.
we were still doing this podcast.
Yeah,
So it
yeah,
wasn't a full year, but like it was
yeah,
within a year. It was like you got to give people time to plan, I think, for a release like that. So
yeah,
yeah, I mean, Metroid Prime. Hey, I'm stoked. I like those games. They're pretty awesome.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, yeah, that
yeah,
was too long. But
yeah.
I
And
wish it
that's
was just coming out on the next Switch, to be honest. But that's they've
right.
obviously been working on it, so like you can't just do that. So
Yeah, and I think that's the thing too, is that like Metroid is such a big IP that they were probably like, we can scrap this and just start over because we know people are going to buy it whenever it does end up coming out. It just sucks for the fans, that we're looking forward to it. But it is the right move at the end of the day, right? Because that 2017 version of the game might have, like, not that we know Metroid Prime 4 is going to be good, but that 2017 version could have been way worse, right?
yeah, yeah,
I think, is it Miyamoto? He's got that quote that I think is not even his quote, but people always say it's his quote. It's just like a
Mo money, mo
like
problems, or
yeah,
something.
more money, more problems. It's like a bad game is bad forever. A delayed game is eventually good, or something like that.
Oh,
I don't know if that's actually him, but I
probably.
do like the quote because I do think that there's some merit to it. But yeah, yeah, it's an interesting question though, Kmore.
Thank you, K Moore. Next question comes from Capolo, who asks, "What is your favorite game tutorial or tutorial like experience, or do you prefer to figure out everything by yourself?"
I have to say, one of my so it depends on the type of game for me. If it's a game like No Man's Sky specifically is a game that they said that too many games around that time were doing a lot of hand holding.
Hmm.
Assassin's Creed games, where it's kind of icon overload, right, of where to go and telling you what to do. They wanted to just kind of have it open ended, and you'd be able to figure out things. I like when games do that sometimes, but if it's we were just talking about throwing a bone, like if it's some of a genre I'm not super familiar with, and then I'm like, ah, man, I wish there was like a better tutorial for this. But first game that came to mind with like that I really enjoyed the tutorial was Portal. Portal, it's just funny. Like it just the way that they teach you how to the portals work, they kind of intertwine it almost with the story, which I thought is a really great way to do that. Especially even like in Portal 2. It's been years since I played, but I believe like they even teach you kind of the co-op side of things and give you a little tutorial that way. So I enjoy when like the tutorial is somehow wrapped up into the story. Maybe there's a little humor in it as well. And then I also do enjoy when it's kind of open ended, right? And like you're trying to figure out, it's almost like that Minecraft experience, right? Of just people, throwing stuff into their little crafting cube there and like, oh, what does like 3 sticks make? Oh man, it makes this or whatever. It's a little different now, actually, in Minecraft, by the way, because I have played a little bit recently. There's a whole like recipe book
Oh
now and
yeah.
everything. And I'm like, ah, man, like I miss the days of Minecraft when that wasn't a thing, and you just had to experiment, and like people would be sending you screenshots of like, oh, you put a diamond in the middle and like sticks all around it, and you got a friggin' staff or whatever. I don't know, whatever it is. Um, but yeah, so that's my thoughts on tutorials. That's an interesting question though, Capolo, because I feel like that is also very subjective for like the type of gamer that you are, the type of games you play. So curious to see what you think, Tom.
So oddly enough, I think my preferred tutorial experience, and we've played a couple like this, but this is the first one that's coming to mind. It's a game that we didn't particularly enjoy. It was the Dungeon Minesweeper game.
Yeah,
But I enjoyed the tutorial because it was separate. It gave you a kind of like boxed in kind of experience of what you're supposed to do. And a lot of games do this, and you can go back to it. That's my biggest thing because as a game player, I don't like tutorials. I'm just like, I just want to play and figure it out. And then I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. Let me go do the tutorial now. As a
yeah,
game reviewer, I like that option as well. I just like kind of some flexibility with the tutorial. So this is a good
yeah.
question, Capolo. Thank you. Now, rcarp11, aka Lady Fresh, asks top 5 bagged snacks. For example, like a Lay's barbecue or Snyder's of Hanover honey mustard and onion pieces.
Ooh, this is a good one.
This is a good one.
So I'm assuming we're not counting. Like, are we counting like Cheez-Its are technically in a bag, but they're in a box?
I would say no.
Okay,
Like I think like I just phrased. 'Cause she said like she said it to me like top 5 chips, right?
okay,
But like, oh, well, pretzels count. She's like, yeah. So I was like, I'll just say bag snacks.
gotcha.
Just like like chip like snacks. I
Okay,
guess is
all right,
probably it's a new category of snacks. Chip
yeah.
likes.
Them
And there's
chi
chip lights.
yeah, oh, the chip lights and the chip likes. Um, yeah, I'm into, I mean, Snyder's of Hanover, honey mustard and onions on the list for me. Absolutely. That's on my list. Trying to think, I mean, I like a regular, like, sour cream and onion chip.
Sure.
I think those are always hitting for me. I just really like that combination, of flavors there. Um I'll throw Cheez-Its on the list. I like Cheez-Its. I haven't had Cheez-Its
Right?
for a while. I had like the Whole Foods version of Cheez-Its, which are all right, but regular Cheez-Its, the ones that'll like kill you, those are the best ones because the cheese is matured. So, um, and I'm trying to think. I mean, rattle some off, Tom. I got to think of like two more.
Let me hit you with some.
Yeah.
One that just returned to stores, Doritos hot mustard, which
Oh,
sounds crazy.
yeah.
It was like a limited edition last year. They did spicy ketchup, hot mustard. Spicy ketchup kind of sucked. Hot mustard, so good. It's like that Chinese mustard, right? That's almost
Okay.
like more horseradish-y,
Yeah.
right? And it's just like, oh man, like it
Yeah.
gets your nose tingling a little bit,
Yeah.
and it just tastes so good.
Ooh, I bet those in like a bowl of pretzels are probably pretty
Oh
fucking good.
yeah,
Mixing
so
them up.
good.
Yeah.
I do love a lot of the flavors of the Hanover Snyder's of Hanover pieces. I did something really fun. I did the cheddar ones and the jalapeno ones, and I mixed them in a bowl together. So you're getting
Oh,
like cheddar, like jalapeno popper.
you bastard.
It was great. It was
Yeah.
amazing.
That sounds awesome. Yeah.
What the hers or the kettle cooked chips, like the hers kettle cooked cheddar and horseradish. Oh, it's amazing.
I think we're there's a theme here that
I
we're
like the
coming through. Tom,
horseradish.
you like
Yeah.
horseradish and cheddar.
Yeah.
Just
But don't even get me started on the cheddar sour cream ruffles. Oh
oh
my
yeah.
god, those are so
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
I'm also into the just plain Utz potato chips. For whatever reason, Utz I think has the best potato
Sure.
chips. Really like those. I'm looking at like a bunch of chips here. It's definitely. I mean, Dots pretzels are pretty good too.
Those are good.
Yeah,
We
if
have
you've
the
ever had
cinnamon
some
sugar
Dots.
ones in our
Oh,
they're
interesting.
pretty good.
Yeah.
They're not an everyday occurrence, I would say.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
regular tortilla chips, gotta say, the
Yeah.
goat, it's just kind of like what am I? I'm dipping it, or I'll go raw dog with them. I mean,
Yeah.
who cares, right?
Yeah.
So
Are you a scoops guy? Are you just a plain old Tostito chip? You like
we've been
shakes?
getting this Abuelita brand
Oh,
from
okay.
Costco. It's really good, but I do like a scoop.
Yeah.
Scoops are like utilitarian in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Fritos scoops though unbeatable in a lot of ways, and then also we gotta say the honey barbecue
Oh.
twists
Oh
from
yeah.
Fritos,
Yeah.
god tier. Chili cheese Fritos, give me a Frito, I'm happy.
Yeah, they're good. They're good. I also sea salt and vinegar chips too,
Okay,
or
yeah,
salt and
yeah.
vinegar, solid as well. Thing I find funny about Fritos too is there's a Mitch Hedberg joke about this, but they got grill marks on it. And like he's like, yeah, I remember like growing up, my dad used to fire up the grill and throw on some Fritos. It's just like, why do they have grill marks on them? Who's grilling up some Fritos?
Oh, they're so
Now,
good though.
question as well,
Sure.
for like cheese puffs or like crunchy or puffy or whatever the question is.
Crunchy. I like a
Crunchy.
puff, but if I'm snacking, it's crunch,
Okay.
I
I'm a puff
there's
guy.
all right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I do like
Nobody's
crunchy stuff.
perfect.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, you're right. You're right. No one is. Yeah, Tom. Yeah.
I could do without the flaming hot these days. Overdone. I liked it initially.
Yeah.
It's a little bit overdone. They did do a buffalo crunchy Cheeto that was quite good.
Oh,
That was a big fan of. And then like we have this brand of pretzels out here in the like Pennsylvania, New Jersey area called Unique Pretzels. Their pretzels are bomb. Just like if you want like a good, just solid pretzel,
yeah.
amazing.
Are
So
they're like hard pretzels?
yeah, the like the specials, like the Utz specials, but they
Oh
have their
yeah,
own. Yeah,
yeah,
I'm looking at my.
yeah. I was like, you got them in there. Yeah.
Oh, I got the Utz in here.
Okay.
But
Also, just got to give a shout out as well. Pickle chips, like pickle flavored
yeah,
chips, that's
sure.
underrated. Like,
Oh yeah.
they're delicious. But I mean, obviously, if you like pickles, but even Maria, who hates pickles, like those chips. So you know,
I
there you
forget
go.
what brand, but there was a creamy dill pickle chip that like was
Oh,
almost like a sour cream and pickle.
yeah,
Out of control.
yeah,
Just
sounds
so
good.
good.
Yeah, we should just have a. Should we have a chip like podcast?
Yeah, we
You
should.
know, yeah. Are
That's
pretzels chip likes?
I mean, they're chip lights, I would
Chip
say.
lights. Okay.
But that's gonna do it for the show, folks. I think next week we're gonna do Ember Ward. We have a short turnaround because we're both traveling next week, so we're gonna record it actually in a few days.
Yeah.
Um, and it's another roguelike,
Yeah.
whatever. We're getting a little crazy, indie games, and yeah, but that means it's time for the rec room. What do you have to
Yeah.
recommend this week?
Let's wreck it up. So shocker, I'm gonna be recommending Shadow of the Erd Tree, DLC for Elden Ring. It's $40. You get over 40 hours of gameplay. It's basically like a whole. People are calling it like Elden Ring 1.5, Elden Ring 2, not Elden Ring 2, but 1.5. I can understand. It's a great time. So if you enjoyed the base game, if you have never, I've seen a lot of people that never really got to play Elden Ring, and they're getting into it now so that they can play up to the DLC. It's just a good time, I think, to get into it because the community is super active. I mean, they're always active, but they're just more active than usual right now. People are discovering things. That's what Elden Ring and Souls games are all about. People figuring out really crazy ways to do things and really weird things that they just find in the world, little secrets here and there. So that's going to be my rec room. I've been having a great time with it. I want to play more with it. I only think about it. I love it. I need it. I can't go to sleep without it. I love no, it's yeah, it's a good time. So that's the rec. But what about you, Tom?
I have two recommendations. Just want to make sure that I'm recommending the right thing here. Um, we are going to recommend a demo that's out. It's from the Next Fest. It would just happened, which we didn't even really get to cover because it kind of was so quick. Star Vaders, yes, another game that is a roguelike deck builder, tower defensey kind of thing, but it was I watched Northern Lion play it and I was pretty sold. Seemed like a pretty awesome demo. Actually, also came pretty highly recommended from Local Thunk, who made
Yep.
Baltro. So his word is gospel, I would say. And Star Vaders was pretty dope. It's a pretty cool game. It's like a grid based. You have these cards. You're moving your little uh, guy around with your cards, and then shooting the oncoming onslaught of robots and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And you can have like different cool kind of decks you can build, right? Like maybe you want to shoot more, right? You want to have more cards that shoot like straight ahead, or you want more cards that like throw bombs and they explode when an enemy comes closer, and there's a bunch of different bomb stuff you can do, which is kind of cool. Now, the other thing that I want to recommend is something that popped up on my algorithm the other day on YouTube, which was
Oh boy.
uh, it was so and so destroys feminist. No, I'm kidding. No, I'm not down that pipeline. Don't worry, folks. It was just an album called Goblin War Dungeon Synth by I think Mountain Realm was the artist. It was just on YouTube. I think it's just like a different remix of one of Mountain Realm's albums, and it was pretty dope. I felt like I was in the Goblin War, and I was a dwarf, and I was like, these freaking goblins suck. So it was a good time. I would recommend checking it out, and yeah,
Hell yeah.
that's my recommendation. I was
That
like all in.
that actually reminds me too. It's not on the rec room, but shout out to Kmore for showing me. There's a demo for a game called Goblin Cleanup on Steam, where you basically, if you're familiar with like Power Wash Simulator, where you're obviously just power washing. You're a goblin that has to clean up the dungeons after the hero leaves and get ready for the next hero to come into the dungeons. So you have to like reset the traps, clean up the blood and everything. And it's like a simulator game where you play as a goblin in a dungeon. So it sounded pretty cool. I haven't checked it out yet, but it's called Goblin Cleanup on Steam. So if anyone plays it, let me know in the Discord if it's good.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds pretty awesome. I'm into that kind of stuff. So that's going to do it for the show. I have been one of your hosts, Tommy Fresh. You can find me on Twitter at FreshBloodsPod, which is where I usually talk about Flesh and Blood, a game that I have another podcast who I did interview, actually. I'm just trying to remember if I'm remembering the name correctly. I interviewed a while ago. Holy smokes. How long ago was it? It was maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
Damn.
I mean, I've been doing that podcast for a long time, folks. I interviewed somebody who did a lot of cosplay for Flesh and Blood. She has now moved on to doing almost exclusively Elden Ring cosplay. I just want to make sure I get her at correctly. Her name is Chalice.
Her name
is Chalice.
Yeah.
I don't know what her name is on. Well, she's awesome. She does great cosplay. So check that out. You can continue to find us on all socials at Fresh Juice Pod, on Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, all that stuff. Yeah.
Is it Miss Chalice?
Is it Miss Chalice? Maybe.
Yeah, I'm seeing some Elden Ring cosplay on Twitter for someone named Miss Chalice. So could be her.
That's got to be her.
There we go. 23,000 followers. Sound about right?
Yes.
There you go.
Yes. I don't know. I searched Chalice before. It didn't show up. Yeah, she's awesome. She does, and I think she does some gameplay as well. So, if you're into the Elden Ring thing, I would check her out. She was a great chat as well, and total bud.
Hell yeah. If you guys want to check me out, like Tommy mentioned, I'm doing a lot of Once Human stuff over on my side at Matty Gorm, Gorm. Been posting some YouTube videos that have started some really great discussions. So I'm getting ready for launch for that game. So if you're interested in that and want to check it out, follow me over on Twitch, on YouTube, wherever, just tweet at me, happy to help answer any questions about that game if people are interested. And yeah, I think that'll do it, Tommy.
We're going to do a live stream of Matt forcing me to play Once Human.
Yep. On mobile.
No, not on mobile. Please, no, not on mobile. But details to come. That's going to do it for this episode. Stay fresh and juicy.